people, since I did my other Hunger Games review in video form and not audio form, and since this is one of my most anticipated of the year, I thought I'd not do an audio review, and so you can see my beautiful face. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 is the fourth and final film in the Hunger Games franchise, and the second part of the final book, which was split into two movies. And this one takes place literally after the second movie, and I really mean that, like the film literally cuts to the shot that would pretty much happen after the last shot of the first movie, and it was all abrupt. But in this film, we continue to follow Katniss as she gathers up all the districts together to start a revolution, uprising against the Capitol to kill President Snow. And President Snow is like, oh, y'all want to rebel against me? Okay, you're all dead. So Katniss and a crew of other characters from the previous films side with her to infiltrate the Capitol so that they can get to President Snow. Now, after watching this movie, it was clear that the final book really did not need to be two movies. But I'll get more into that later. For right now, let's talk about the positives. Now, the first part of this particular story, it was more of a political thriller-ish. But in this particular part of the story, the second part, it was more of a war film about a group of soldiers trying to get from point A to point B. And I actually enjoyed that a lot about this film. It had kind of a Saving Private Ryan type vibe to it. And it's also relatively the darkest of the Hunger Games movies. Like, there are a lot of points in the movies where I was just like, damn. And a lot of bad stuff happens in the film, and there is a bunch of moments in this film where I was like, didn't see that coming. Now, I'm not going to spoil, but there was one thing that happened in the movie that I knew was going to happen. And it's not because I read the books, but because apparently every time I see a movie, I always try to look up some of the characters and see what's in-game for some of the characters. And apparently there was one character, I looked this person up, and I was like, okay, that's enough. I didn't need to know more. But there were other moments in the film that I didn't know was going to happen. Hence, when it happened, I was like, bro, I didn't see that coming. As far as the characters go, I say everybody bought their A game, particularly Jennifer Lawrence. Like, Jennifer Lawrence, she continues to be good in these films. Josh Hutcherson, I'd say, was the real MVP of this movie. I'd say this is the best film featuring Peter. And I felt that they developed his character a lot more in this film than they did the previous films. And that's mostly because Josh Hutcherson, he had the toughest role to pull in this film given his character's circumstances. Now, among all that being good in the film, what this film ultimately suffers is from a movie being based on an average-sized book being split into two. This is where my negatives come in. I really mean that because the movie had more than enough pacing issue, particularly in the second act of the film when Katniss and her team were on their mission, which I loved, and they had two good action scenes in the movie, particularly, that part where they're running through that black tar liquid, whatever, and when they're running in the sewers from them I Am Legend zombie knockoffs, or as other reviewers are calling them, the xenomorph knockoffs. But I really love those two scenes, but it's the stuff in between that was just kind of filler, and it really slowed the movie down. They really stretched this movie out to justify splitting that book into two movies. I felt the ending of this movie is the biggest offender of that. Now granted, something happens during the ending of the movie that took a turn for the story that I actually liked. It's the stuff that happened after it I kind of have a problem with. It's like the ending, they just kept going and going and going with the ending. To the point where I was like, okay, you can end now. In the end, despite the fact that this movie suffers from pacing issues because this movie is based on a book that was split into two movies, I really did enjoy this film. I really enjoyed myself watching this movie. And if they were going to split that final book into two, I like the fact that it's kind of, in a sense, two different genres and two different tones. As is, the first part was more of a political thriller, and then the second part is more of a war movie. And I did feel like this was a pretty satisfying ending to the Hunger Games series. Is it as satisfying as Return of the Jedi or Toy Story 3 or The Lord of the Rings Return of the King? Not remotely, but I did feel like they wrapped the story up pretty good though. And in that, I'm going to say the same thing I said about Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, this what I said about Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. If I'm watching Part 1, I'm going straight into Part 2 because without one another, they're just irrelevant. And because of that, I'm going to give Mockingjay Part 2 the same grade I gave Mockingjay Part 1. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 gets a B+, for I would buy on Blu-ray. However, if you watch them both together, back to back, I will say The Hunger Games Mockingjay gets an A+ for full price. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to do a spoiler review of this movie. Be on the lookout for that. And be on the lookout for my non-spoiler and spoiler review of Creed when I finally see those movies. And then Return of the Jedi and then Star Wars Force Awakens when that finally comes out. That's it for the day. If you like what you see, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my other channel. The links are in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Movie Pilot. Peace.